Hello everyone, welcome to the Grow Your Future podcast. I am your host, Zah and I am joined by the Falafel.
The falafel.
Sam Eljaban, how are you?
Good, man, good. How you doing? The falafel. I haven't been called a falafel in a long time.
Yeah, we were just talking about falafels earlier. You know, like you wouldn't normally go for one, but if you were fasting, you would love it.
It would be a delicious meal. It's funny you said. I remember there was a big Christmas party we went to back in my early 20s at this company I was working at. And it was at Daltone House, you know, fancy place.
Nice.
The whole company was there, different offices. It was a really fancy sort of gig. Everyone's dressed up, and it was sort of silver. What do you call it? Waiters came around with hors d'oeuvres and stuff. And you won't believe they brought like this silver lined tray, and there was about 4 falafels on it. I couldn't stop laughing because my dad obviously is from the Middle East, and he said that's what he used to eat when they had no money on the street.
Yeah, because it's made out of lentils or something.
It's chickpeas and other
chickpeas,
sort
that's
of
right.
beans
Yeah,
and stuff.
yeah.
So it's like, it's what you eat when you don't have any money.
Yeah.
And it was just very funny that it came out in this super high classy place. And the people are going, oh, yeah, I'll have a falafel.
Yeah.
Fuck
You know
off,
what?
man.
That's the same in our Asian culture as well. Like there are things that my dad tells me that they used to eat because they had no money for, protein rich sort of foods, right? And but it's funny, it's become a delicacy over here, and they charge through the roof for it.
You know? Dad's probably laughing. Oh, what's wrong with these people?
It's all marketing. It's all marketing. What are we talking about today, Sam?
Today,
we haven't done a podcast on Luxland since my book launch.
Yes. Give us an update. How's everything?
Been an incredible response.
Yeah.
Like everyone, is raving on about it. The people who have bought it, not everyone, but people who have sort of bought it and ordered it. It's really great to see that people have made an effort to not just buy it, but also consume the content as well. And I'm starting to get feedback on it, which is really, really good. Like it's good in a time like this where there's so much fear and so much uncertainty, and it's good that people can sort of just curl up with a good book, and they're just almost being told that it's going to be all right.
Yeah, you're showing like a positive light on the world and property things really as well.
Yeah, and look, we've been through a few downturns ourselves. We've seen what this can do to a market, and look, at the end of the day, it's all about long term. Buy when you can afford, hold on for dear life. But it's just all of the basic rules in there just to keep you going, because a lot of people now, they're freaking out, like this whole interest rates. There's a lot of people still to come off these fixed rate mortgages, but I think the pain is sort of here now, and people are starting to go, wow, I've got to live with these high rates and high repayments. What do I do with my investments? What do I do with my home? And a lot of people are considering selling and all of that sort of thing. And I think it's probably the most difficult time right now.
Well, it's a new normal. So we've gone, past few years, the interest rate's been pretty low. Now they're quite high. It's a new environment we have to adjust to. And that's what we have to, it's not ending. Nothing's ending. It's just adjusting.
Life goes on, Sam. Life goes on. And we've got to understand as well that the cost to replace property at the moment with, the combination of land values and build costs, they're still expensive. And I think that's what's upholding, or one of the contributing factors of upholding the market. We're seeing, in the last couple of months, there's been actually growth in pretty much all markets. And that just shows the resilience of the Australian property market where, it is really hard to take down. But because prices are so expensive still, and rates are high, people are starting to go, well, is home ownership really the answer? And that's what we're talking about today on this episode. We've called it the Great Australian Dream 2.0. So we're going to go through 10 points of, what I guess millennials and Gen Zs will be striving for. Because when we spoke earlier today about, the baby boomers versus the millennials and versus the Gen Zs, their priorities are all different. Like if we look at our parents, for example, their priority, obviously on top of, raising a family and all of that sort of thing, was to buy the home and pay it off. And that's the priority. That was the original Australian dream. And I think now millennials and Gen Zs, they're starting to think, well, is that really the dream? Like, is home ownership really the dream, right? I think there's other things that, like, we're millennials, and owning the home isn't really a priority for us. Maybe it will be one day, but it's not really the main priority for us. Like, we've got a lot of other things in our life that we're sort of striving towards, and which are very, very important in front of home ownership. So I think there's a new great Australian dream on the horizon. The media keep sort of pushing home ownership as the be all and end all, and obviously that's controlled by banks, and it keeps these people working, and the taxes are paid and all of that sort of thing. But really, if we drill down to what people actually want, especially within the next generation, I think priority is going to change moving into the future.
It's like with everything, really. It's the time in society, what's happening in society dictates what happens, like trends, right? So it's not like we're choosing to go down the path of not owning a home. It's circumstances outside of our control sometimes that are going to dictate a new trend that's going to force a lot of people to go down that path, whether they like it or not. So back in the day, our parents sort of could potentially afford the home, buy the home. They would buy homes when they were setting up families, so that whole dynamic in society is changing. People aren't having families early, so they're not buying homes early. So there's a lot of sort of societal things that are changing, which is affecting the market and what happens in the market.
And it's not necessarily that they did the wrong thing. I don't think baby boomers did the wrong thing, because obviously a lot of them have come out on top and they've done quite well. But we have to really wind back the clock and go, okay, what was it like in the 1970s, 1980s, when these guys were in their 30s and they were raising families, and what really was available to them? Instagram wasn't around, YouTube wasn't around. I don't even think property investment was really that big back then. So what would you know, right? Put money in the bank because interest rates were quite high, and you could get a good return. And buy a home, right? That was those were sort of the two things that I don't even think super was really introduced back then.
It was brought in the 90s.
Yeah, so 90s. What else do you put your money into? So I don't blame them for doing that. And obviously the result of that is a booming property market, right? And a lot of having that home ownership has made them very proud and all of that sort of thing.
They're secure. Financially secure.
Right. And a lot of them didn't have businesses. They were on fixed incomes because businesses didn't have the opportunity it has today. Like, anyone can be an entrepreneur now. So I think they did the right thing, but we have to understand that the younger generation, in terms of the millennials and the Gen Zs, they've got a different set of circumstances in front of them. Number one, property prices compared to incomes are, so much different to when, the baby boomers were buying, right? Number two, like, there's now opportunity to do more things with your money. And more things with your time, and also there's just so much choice, right? And everybody's different, right? And it might not be working your whole life to pay off a home and then going, that's it, I've made it, right? Like, there's other things that people want to do. So the first step is, obviously forgetting about home ownership. And that doesn't mean about forgetting about home ownership forever, because I think a lot of people, even including myself, will one day want to own my home. But I haven't reached that point yet, right? And I know a lot of millennials and Gen Zs, they're starting to not really care about it, Sam. They just, it's not important to them anymore because they want to live their life, they want to do other things.
Yeah, and going back to our parents' sort of situation, a lot of that home buying when you're young is probably based on having a family and that being delayed in life now because people want to go travel, they want to find themselves, they want to have fun before they settle down, do all these more serious things. It's leading to that sort of
well, we're a perfect example, right? We delayed having a family, and we've only just started, and I think in the next probably 4 or 5 years, maybe I'll consider buying the home because then I've got to think about my son going to school, and you want to be in, I guess a stable location and all of that sort of thing. But, there's so many other things that I want to do between now and then as well, right? And I think a lot of other people will sort of agree with me as well, whether they're my age, younger, older. It's not everything. Like, I think the media has made this out of home ownership to be the be all and end all. But there are just other things that you can do. You know, you don't have to buy the home. And you can still create wealth for yourself, you know, because I think the home ownership was about creating wealth for yourself, and the government pushes it by incentivizing you by saying, okay, if you sell your home, it's CGT free, as in capital gains tax free, and you can roll that into an upgrade, you know, into a more expensive home if you want. And I guess that keeps the property market going by having that, I guess, exemption, tax exemption. And it just shows the government is trying to push you towards that home ownership, right? But really, I think the majority of the population will always try and push towards it. But I think there's a bigger portion now of people just going, you know what, fuck the home ownership. I'm just going to go and focus on other things like traveling, investing in my business, maybe investing in other property and not live in it, and finding alternative ways to create wealth for themselves, which is what we ultimately have done.
And they're doing it because there's people like you and us that are trying to do it and have done it. So before, like you were saying, our parents didn't have these other ideas to go down.
There's no podcast.
There's no podcast. So they probably didn't, like back then you probably were, it might have been a bit more classist society where, like, think people on the coast weren't so wealthy, so their ideas, they didn't know about the stuff that people in Mossman were doing, or people in Bondi were doing with their money.
They weren't exposed to it.
They weren't exposed because you hung out with whoever you were locally with.
Well, there's no internet.
There's no internet.
Sam, there was nothing. You
couldn't
know
listen to a bloke who was doing stuff
different. There
were
even hardly any books around, I was told, you know.
So you sort of were just funneled down that path, that's all you knew. And I think, expanding on what you were saying, that Australian dream of owning the home, it's sort of an extension of the go to school, do well at school, go to uni, get a good job, buy the home, have the family, that whole dictated path, which we're finding that people don't want to go down that path, or they have and they still can't even buy the home. They're like, fuck this, there has to be another way to do it. So I think people are just trying to work out another way, and that's the 2.0.
They're getting over it, right? They're getting over it. Like, you got to look at these mature markets across the world, right? You know, New York, these European countries, all of that sort of place. Those places where they've been around for a long time, their populations have exploded. You know, they're sitting on 8 million plus people. Those markets have people in there that just don't even worry about home ownership. They've just not so much given up, but they're just like, well, I've accepted the class I'm going to be in. I'm going to make do with what I have, and potentially live a better life than chasing home ownership, right? Like, I think if it can be a forever chase, and there are other ways for you to get ahead. You know, that's the reason why it's pushed so much by the governments and the banks, because they're trying to advertise the fact that, hey, if you don't have your foot in on the property ladder in terms of your home, you're never going to make it in life. But it's not true. Like, there are other ways that you can do it, and we're going to move on to the next point of rent vesting. So that is the most obvious alternative to home ownership. So rent vesting means that you invest in other markets and you rent those places out and get an income from those assets and get all the tax deductions because they're investments, and then you choose to rent in a location that's convenient to you. So that's what we do. You know, we rent in the city, same as you, but we invest in other markets. Like right now, we're investing heavily into Melbourne, southeast Queensland. We're getting better returns there, and ultimately we can control more real estate. So instead of buying, say, a $3 million home, we're controlling $30 million worth of real estate elsewhere, which is all being paid for. So we get a return on a bigger asset rather than just the home waiting for it to grow in value. So yes, there are benefits of buying the home, and like I said earlier, like, I will probably get to that point at some stage, but right now I see better returns financially via rent vesting, and I think, you know, we're located in Sydney, and you know, the Sydney property market, I think the median house price at the moment is like 1.4 million or something like that, right? So it's a lot of money, you know, and if you're striving to buy even at 1.4, what are you going to buy? But if you're striving to sort of lock down a mortgage of say $1 million, you're saving say 400 grand to put down as a deposit, like,
that's going to take.
Is it the highest and best use of your time, money, and effort? I don't think so. I think we should look at the 2.0 and go, okay, what are other ways we can do this? The first possible route would be rent vesting, and this is where I guess it's not touted by the media or the government as much.
It doesn't get much limelight. Like,
no, I mean, there's a lot of guys that sort of self-promote themselves as these gurus, and it's really good because you could, I guess, say it's our competition or whatever. They do really, really good, and they're showing people that it is possible to invest in other markets and create wealth for yourself without having to worry about buying the home. Like if you've got a portfolio worth $5 million or $10 million of investment properties, are you really worried about whether you own the home or not? Like I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm getting the exposure to real estate. I'm getting the returns from several different markets, which is better than just having it in the one, all your eggs into the one basket.
Well, you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting the appreciation that property gives you, but you get to live where you want at a fraction of the price.
Exactly. So. And I think they use the sort of capital gains free discount as a way, I guess, they dangle the carrot in front of you, go, no, this is the way to do it. And when you think about it, someone who commits to a 30-year mortgage is, especially if it's their home, non-tax deductible debt, they're going to work on trying to get that paid down over the next 30 years, right? So it's enslaved them to paying those interest repayments, and who wins out of that? Really, the banks. Right?
They're creating order. That's the whole mortgage. To buy the home stuck for 30 years. You're creating order in society, but now society is not the same as it used to be. You can go live anywhere in the world, make money from anywhere in the world. It's wild now. Like,
and people are more educated, Sam. Right? People are listening to podcasts like this. They're engaging in stories like what I've done. They're taking inspiration and motivation away from it. So now they're starting to think, oh wow, there is another way. There is another way. So yeah, rent vesting I think is a really, really good alternative. It's probably a better alternative.
It's the new Australian dream.
Yeah,
I reckon, because people still see the value in property. Like, it's never going to go away. People still want to own property. Just buying it to live in and using all that income to go towards the home, it's just not a viable thing anymore. So I think the idea that property is still an important item to attain in your life is still there, just you can go about it another way, and that is this new way to do it.
And you know what I love about rent vesting, Sam, before we move on, is that rent vesting allows you to not have to worry about having to meet that criteria of that $1.5 million price point, say in Sydney here. So you can go to these cheaper markets like Southeast Queensland, Melbourne, and for example, Southeast Queensland, you can buy a house and land package for 750 grand and you're half an hour from the CBD. Like, that's awesome. Like, you can't do that here. Yeah. And do you really care that, you don't really care about the location too much. I mean, you want it to be solid enough to give you that long-term growth, but you're not going to live there. So you don't really care whether the house is a certain color or, the tiles are a certain dimension, or you don't care about that stuff. You just care about the return on investment. So you can think of it commercially and go, okay, what's the rental return? What's the track record of the growth in the location? Yep, I'm gonna buy it and park a portion of my capital there and just let it grow in value. So it actually becomes an easier decision because I actually dread the day I have to buy the home.
Why?
Because you're going to become so picky with
so emotional, and think. Logic is investing.
Because you got to live there.
Logic is investing. Buying a home is emotional. Emotions change over time. So maybe you don't want to live there all the time. Do you know what I mean? But you've created roots there. So delaying that acquisition as long as you can.
It's such a big decision, and especially if you're spending over $1 million, $2 million, whatever it is. Like it's a big throw. You know what I mean? And you've got to commit to paying that off. Over how many years you think you can pay it off for. So it's a big commitment. And I enjoy rent vesting because it makes decisions so much easier because you follow the numbers, you follow the fundamentals, and you just get it done and you move on, right? And it doesn't take up a lot of your time. Like I've got mates at the moment who are building homes, and my God,
The stories, huh?
the mental capacity that it's got to take up, it's like, it's too much, right? So I think, there are other things we can focus on. Like you said, it's the new dream, right? But we need to get educated on it. And going back to the price points where you can be in a more affordable markets, like there are other companies out there that, like property investment firms, we don't specialize in these products, but there are companies out there that get properties as cheap as like 180 grand. I was watching a video the other day, and I think it was a 1-bedroom older apartment or something like that in Perth or something for 180 grand, right? Wow. And it had like an 8% yield. And look, it's not something we would buy our clients, but there's a market out there for people that just really need to get their foot in the door. 10% deposit on that's 18 grand. So it allows you to get your foot in the door. Like all of this media about housing affordability and, we can't afford to get our foot in the door. It's totally untrue. Because if you go down the rent vesting path, you can buy a property for 180 grand and you can get a cracker yield on it, right? So yeah, it's not ideal. Like if you don't have to buy that, buy something for 500-600 and get a much better quality asset. But there are options there for everybody.
No matter the price point and no matter the strategy as well. So that shows that there's probably a cash flow strategy. So no matter what you're doing, there's something available. Yeah.
Well, we read things all the time in the paper where people have gone off grid and they're living, 500 kilometers west of a CBD and they've bought a place for 300 grand and they're living a great life. Like, I would much rather just rent somewhere closer to a CBD so I can be around everyone and everything that I want to use and just invest your money in other markets where they're, I guess, undervalued at the moment. It's just a much smarter strategy, especially for us Sydney-siders, because I get calls all the time where, I've got mates who are trying to buy sites to build duplexes and they're spending a bomb. Like these are like $5-6 million plays, right? And they'll make good money out of it, but there's a big risk and they're pushing themselves to do it.
And what age are they? Just curious. How old are these guys?
Mid-30s.
Mid-30s?
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, the guys coming to you to get into property and build a portfolio, how old are they?
Oh, they're young.
They're young. So it's sort of it's not even the dream, it's like a reality now. So you're seeing the younger people going, fuck, I'm not building a home. They're in the 30s and 40s, whatever, building the home. The younger guys are actually seeing the examples and pursuing it. So it's
if the younger guys start out at, say, 24, 25, and they spent the next 10, 15 years building a portfolio of assets, and they just continue to rent, they're going to get to, say, 40, 45 years old and go, all right, now I've got the choice to buy the home that I want, whether it's in Sydney or somewhere else. Like they can spend $2-3 million, because they've got those assets behind them. I think the people that go straight into home ownership, it's probably not the right decision for them, and their life's going to be hard because they're going to just be focused on paying this mortgage off. And I don't know. To me, that's not a dream.
Well,
that's a nightmare.
That focus is going to be for 30 years.
Yeah.
Too, if they don't sell. So. I think reinvesting is the new way to get ahead. It used to be buy the home and you're sweet. Now this doesn't work. So,
next, number 3 is flexibility and freedom. So this is what millennials and Gen Zs love, right? Flexibility means that you can work on your own terms and all of that sort of thing. That could be to do with getting the better job if you're in a career. Starting a specific type of business where it suits your lifestyle. These things are important to the younger generation, and it's important to me. The baby boomers, I think they come from an era where it doesn't matter what you do, as long as you're putting food on the table, and if it's hard work, suck it up, right? I think now we value our time a little bit more. We want to spend it with people that we actually like. We want to spend it doing things that are a bit more meaningful and purposeful. So these things like flexibility and freedom are really important, which means that, is home ownership really going to give you that?
Well, if you think, what's the opposite of flexibility and freedom? It's trapped.
Yeah.
If you're trapped, you're like a slave.
Yeah.
So it's sort of you're trying to avoid being a slave. Really.
Yeah.
A good example of this is a family friend of ours. There's a group of them, and one of the group owns a property. They bought it, high debt situation, single income, so they're doing it pretty tough. The other friends in the group are going to go on this big trip, and she can't because she's got this big debt, and she's young. So it's really and
she's trapped.
Not only like it's a good thing, I guess, she bought the home. Like she's gone down that path. It's going to create character. She's going to get ahead if she adjusts a few things about the situation. Maybe rent it out, goes rent somewhere else. But just the idea that mortgage sitting above her is dictating her decisions, and she's young. She's not going to get the years back. So if she was to say maybe rent that out and rent somewhere cheaper, or just have some help paying that mortgage off, so it's not dictating what she can and can't do, she'd be a lot happier. So that was actually a situation I heard, and I was like, wow, like, maybe you have to tweak a few things in what you're doing.
That's a big difference, isn't it? Like especially in this high interest rate environment, like you are chained to, paying that back. We had a friend the other day say, Zah, I don't want to, I'm going to skip investing for a little bit and buy the home. And he was going to spend $2.5 million. I don't know if he's done it yet or not. He was going to get $2.2 million mortgage. I think he was only going to put 10% down or something like that. And I think he worked it out, it was going to be like 15, 20 grand a month in mortgage repayments. And I was like,
that's massive.
Wow. Like,
no one's helping you pay it. You have to pay it.
Yeah, do you really need the home? Like, do you really need it? Because that's you for a very long time, and that's going to obviously push you to work harder, but you're basically a slave to that home. And yeah, your wife's going to like it, the kids are going to like it, and all of that sort of thing, but is it really worth it? Like, to me, that's not worth it.
It's like signing up to do time. He's doing time.
Yeah.
He's going to be in this uncomfortable situation for a long time. And at the end of it, he might not.
Like, he could probably rent that place for $4 grand a month.
Yeah. So he can contribute to the mortgage.
Yeah.
And rent somewhere else, which is going to free him up a lot.
Yeah.
And he'll be able to make nicer decisions for himself and his family. I think that's the sort of gist I think that's coming out of it.
I think it's putting unnecessary stress on yourself, you know. Like, if you can afford it, you can afford it. But we're talking about, the people that are sort of questioning it and going, okay, well, where's the better use of my funds? And look, I could say I could afford it, you know what I mean? But I still don't do it because I just don't feel like it's right, right? Like, I've got plenty of other things happening in my life, like businesses and, obviously my investment portfolio, and it gives me so much flexibility and freedom. We can travel when we want, all of that sort of thing. It really does help. And I think people are in the millennial generation and Gen Zs, they're really focusing on quality of life. And I think you're going to degrade your quality of life if you sort of jump into home ownership too early.
Well, just saying that means naturally people will go down this path because they want the quality of life, but they still are getting pressure to buy houses and stuff. So naturally they're going to buy investments because they're still told buy the property, but they want to go overseas. They want to enjoy their life. They want to do whatever they want. So this is the only way forward.
This is the answer. And I'm a perfect example of this because I don't own my own home.
And you've got time in the game to show you what happens.
Exactly. And you do the numbers. It just doesn't make sense, right? And this is where we're trying to get people to understand it. So, because we get a lot of clients coming in going, okay, they buy 1 or 2 investment properties and then they get married. Then the wife gets in their ear and go, no, I want to buy the home, right? And then they buy the home and it slows them down. And so many times it's happened, and we want to educate people from the beginning to say, hey, like, what's more important? Saying that you own a home and being in a stable location and all of that sort of thing versus the life that you want to live. Like you don't want to get to a point where you just regret it, Number 4, travel's a big one, so I'm actually traveling next week. I'm going for 4 to 5 weeks, going to Europe. If I had a $25,000 a month mortgage repayment,
stay home.
Would I be going overseas? Home. No, I'll probably be, really
going in the backyard.
Our travel will be the, will be the garage. That's it. You know what I mean?
Well, you want to make the most of it.
Yeah.
Because that's what I think. I think if you build a nice palace, because that's what people do when they buy the home, they make it so nice so they don't leave. And
Yeah.
probably because they can't leave, because they're paying so much for the house, they have to make it as nice and as enjoyable as they can, so they stay home. You know?
And travel's a big thing
Yeah.
for the younger generation. And I think now with social media, because we're exposed to what's going on the other side of the world, good and bad,
Yeah.
it makes us want to travel more. And I find that younger people tend to want to travel a lot more than, say, I guess the way my parents did, maybe because they couldn't afford it and all of that thing. My parents still traveled, but not as extensively as I do. Everyone wants to fly business, all of that sort of thing, stay in 5-star hotels. So to be able to do that, you need that flexibility. And I think the value on travel, I just don't think it's ever been this high in demand before, and you can see that through the pricing of flights and accommodation at the moment. And people say, oh, it's the rebound of COVID, everyone was locked up. Like, that was ages ago. So like, the reason why it's so expensive is because the demand is there, and not just because of the lockdowns, it's because people really want to do it. And you see people who are as young as 18, 19 years old, they're going all through Europe. Like, I've never been to Europe before. Next week is the first time we're going, like, because we couldn't afford it, right? But now, like, we're obviously in a position where we can, you know, like, but we're seeing so many young people just take off and leave. Whether I don't know whether they got wealth or not, that's irrelevant. But what we're trying to say here is that the younger generation put a high value on travel. Now, if you put a high value on travel, and that's it's what you want to do, you have to choose whether you do that or buying the home. And this is where this whole argument between the baby boomers and millennials are. The baby boomers going, oh, we never went on holidays, we never did this, we never did that, all you guys want to do is travel and have fun. And it's like, okay, but that is true. We do want to travel and have fun, but let's not whinge about home ownership. Let's rent vest, right? So we can have that flexibility to allow us to maybe go on more holidays. So we're not spending 25 grand a month on mortgage repayments, right? We've got the 25 grand a month to go towards our travel, which we've probably placed more value on than home ownership. There's nothing wrong with that, right? I actually place more value on travel than I do with home ownership.
It's experience. It's life experiences and stuff. Instead of like a material thing, which is what a home is. It's a physical thing. So you'd rather go and experience stuff with the family, blah, 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 which makes a lot of sense. Those things.
And there's nothing wrong with it. Like, the baby boomers are making out there's something wrong with it. But what the baby boomers should be saying to the millennials and the Gen Zs, they should be saying, hey, home ownership, yes, it's fucking expensive at the moment. We get it, right? Plus, you live in a time now where you focus on things like travel and holidays and eating at fancy restaurants and all of that sort of thing. This is the alternative you should be thinking about. Invest in property, because we didn't do it. Because there's a lot of baby boomers that didn't do it, right? And they regret not doing it. So what they should be doing is smashing the millennial generation, going, okay, you don't want to buy the home, fine. You want to go on holidays, fine. You want to eat avocado on toast, fine, right? But invest in a portfolio of assets, right? Rent where you want to live and invest in a portfolio of assets, and just slowly accumulate over time. Have the flexibility in your life and enjoy it, right? That's the advice they should be getting, not these baby boomers going, oh, we had it tough and we never went on holidays and we ate shit off the floor for fucking 3 weeks.
They're not providing
and blah, blah,
a solution,
blah. Like, I mean,
an alternative.
it's like, stop flexing how hard you had it and start adapting to what is current in this environment today and what is needed by the younger generation. Like, I'll admit it, I'm a millennial and I need travel. Like, if I don't travel, I feel shit, right? If I don't focus on my business, I feel shit. You know what I'm saying? Right? Like, if I don't eat out at good places, I feel shit. It's something that I need. But do I need home ownership? No. But do I whinge about it? No, I don't whinge about it, right?
You come up with another plan. So, and I'll just to finish off on that, you can have your cake and eat it too. This is what we're saying. You can have the home ownership through another route, investing, and do all this fun stuff. I have clients that I think they left just last week, did the returns for them. Lovely young couple, 21 years old or so. They saved up together, not married yet, bought a property, I think a year ago.
Investment.
Yeah. And I think The male, he wanted to go again, but the girl, she was like, no, we've done all right, like let's go. He was feeling bad and he wants to keep going, like keep moving forward, which I sort of get. He's got momentum. But I was talking to him, I'm like, man, you guys are 21, you've done, like, by all means go and do another property, but if you want to travel, you're already in the market.
Yeah.
How much has the property made you? It's gone up, I think, 75 grand.
Yeah.
How long does it take you to make 75 grand?
Well, that pays for their trip, really.
So it's cemented to them. They're
Yeah.
like, okay, well, this is my path forward. I can buy a property that goes up in value and still do the stuff I like, enjoy my salary, eat out, build a business if I want to, but I still got these assets that I'm going to keep buying that go up to counter that lack of home ownership that I live in.
And going back to that example of those other firms that recommend properties for 150 grand or whatever it is, it's possible on any budget.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really matter where you're at.
There's no excuse not to buy it.
There's no excuse. Like, even if you don't have the money to travel overseas and all of that sort of thing, but maybe you want to just travel interstate, right? And invest in a $150,000 asset at the same time. At least you're doing something.
Indeed.
Lifestyle. So, obviously location is tied to lifestyle.
Yep.
A lot of people can't afford to, I guess, buy in the location where they would prefer to have a lifestyle. Usually lifestyle drivers are driven by, employment hubs, where people, have recreation, restaurants, bars, that sort of thing.
Locational type stuff.
Yeah, so like, for example, we live in the city and, we're close to all of the amenity the city has to offer.
Yep.
We enjoy being close by and because we actually need convenience in our life. So for us, lifestyle's a big thing, but, it comes at a price.
Yep.
So if you want to buy the property where you actually want to live, costs a lot of money. I was looking at on realestate.com the other day and, I like the suburb Strathfield, maybe that it could be a place where I end up because of the schools and all of that sort of thing for my son. And I thought, okay, well, let's have a look at the rental market. And there was a property on there that was worth 10 million bucks. Obviously 10 million to buy this thing it's a lot of money, right?
Beast, yeah.
But you can rent it for $3.5 grand a week. So you can be in the suburb of choice, send your kids to the school that you want to send them to for a fraction of the cost, right? So that's I guess for the people that have kids, but there are people that I guess want to live on Bondi Beach and live 100 meters from the water. That's a lifestyle driver, right? But you can rent a place there. Instead of buying it for $3-4 million, just rent it.
Just to put some numbers to that, just so people can see it. $10 million at say 4% interest. Just say it's $8 million, 4%. That's $320,000, say interest only. But you have to pay the principal. So say it's $450,000 a year, as opposed to $3 grand a week.
$3.5 grand a week. So it works out to be $175 a year or
so
something. So
it's 1/3 of the actual cost. But you can live there.
And people will argue, okay, but Zah, you're paying rent money's dead money, but interest repayments is also dead money because you're not getting that. And they go, oh, but what about the capital appreciation on the asset? Yeah, but what if you had 10 mil
somewhere else going up?
Yeah, and it's paying for itself. So every time I do the numbers on home ownership, it doesn't work. Financially. Now, if you've got surplus funds, right, you've inherited $5-10 million bucks or whatever it is, and you don't know what to do with the money. Like, I've actually got friends that have so much money, they actually don't know what to do with it. They're fully invested in their businesses. They've got projects happening on the side. Like, they actually don't know what to do with the remaining, call it $5-10 million bucks. So they put it into an asset. That's totally fine. Like, you've got the money to do it, but this is home ownership. We're talking about getting a mortgage out, potentially looking at using it as a financial stepping stone. We just think there's better use for the funds elsewhere. And look, there's nothing wrong for our listeners that already own their home. There's nothing wrong with it. There are a lot of benefits to it, right? And good on you, like, well done. This is for the people really who are struggling to think about how they're ever going to own a home. And for the guys that get a little bit hurt from when baby boomers are telling them that they want too much out of life and they don't sacrifice enough. This is the alternative, right? We're offering the lifestyle at I guess a better rate, right? Like it's easier.
efficient. It's efficient. So we're not bashing homeowners. If you can do it, that's great. Like we said, it's a good thing to do if you can do it. But this is for people that can't do it. Like a lot of people in Sydney, you can't do it.
You can't. Average incomes, too expensive.
Average incomes are here. Average home prices there. You just can't do it. So it's
it's only going to get worse, right?
As time goes on,
this is the number one city that people migrate to. It's pushing prices up. It's also pushing rents up as well. But it's becoming more and more unattainable for the average person to buy a home in Sydney. And the only people that are really going to be transacting on it are the people that have already been in the market, or they inherited the wealth. It's been passed down to them. And that's like what happens in every mature market. We've just got to fucking deal with it. Like it's not going to change. Like the government's not going to go, oh, you know what, let's crash the property market by 30-40% so everybody can fucking afford to get in. It's just not going to happen. So we've just got to accept reality and go, okay, what is the next best thing?
Just to finish on that, give us one. There was a point that was made, so just so we know it's not going to change, right? The old Liberal finance minister, Matthias Cormann, I don't know if you remember that guy, a couple of years back, he said in one of his speeches or blogs or whatever, he said low wage increases or low wages is a form of economic architecture within the economy. They create that. They create a low wage base. So it's not going to change. It's part of the system. So if you think things will get easier, all that kind of stuff, or there might be a way to buy the home, whatever, it's never going to get easier. So you just have to come up with another strategy. If your wages aren't, growing up.
And this is a perfect strategy. This is what I've done, right? When I first started out, I couldn't afford to buy the home, so I had to. I was forced to invest in other markets. I got my money working for me, and if I'm probably at a point now where I could probably buy the home, but I'm just enjoying my life too much. Exactly. Number 6 is this is a big one now. Investing in your business and your career. It's big for millennials. It's big for Gen Zs. There's so much opportunity now because of social media and the reach we can have. The amount of scale we've got through, the channels that are at our fingertips is amazing. So starting a business has never, ever been easier in the history of mankind. And this is becoming important. Like my parents and your parents as well, Sam, they're both on fixed incomes. So they weren't business people, and it's because probably they didn't have the opportunities that we have. We're very fortunate, right, that we can get the exposure that we need to get business coming into the door. So for me, my business is much more important than home ownership. My business, and I think sometimes people's careers should be more important, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to, I guess, give you the best return. Like you're investing in yourself, right? And I think a lot of millennials and Gen Zs are sort of seeing that now and going, oh, hang on a second, what's the home going to do for me? It's not going to pay me an income, but my business will.
It's like the chicken and the egg sort of thing. What comes first? Really, is the income. If whatever you want to buy, it's going to come from an income. So if you're focusing on that first step, which is an income, whether it's the job or the business, and usually you'd probably agree, the business becomes like a baby. It's sort of like an extension of yourself. So you sort of nurture it like a home is sort of thing. It's like a way to...
I think it's the reason why we probably delayed having kids, because the businesses to us were like our babies.
You're growing this
and the people within the businesses were like our babies as well. So like we felt like that void was filled, right? And look, it's given us the best return, and we actually tell people, focus on your business first before you even think about rental properties, because the business will give you the best return. Like I had a client the other day come to me and go, Zah, I've got, I think it was like 200 grand. I've got a choice between investing in one of your products or buying this existing business that I'm looking at. And I pushed him towards the existing business. I said, mate, if that is going to give you that return, pour all your eggs into that for now, because once it throws off enough cash, you're not buying one property through us, you're buying fucking 10, right? So investing in your business and your career, I think is much more important than home ownership. Like, especially if you want to be big in business and you want to personally grow and all of those sort of things, like get into that early.
And there's another thing on that is, if you do have a mortgage and your home, it'll be much harder to take a risk on a new job or a new business if you have that lingering over your head.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I think the person that has the home is great, but going back to that example of a close friend, it can really restrict on how much risk you're willing to take. A holiday is one thing, but if she has an
Well, you
idea,
can't lose. You can't afford to lose.
Like, yeah, you need that money all the time to pay that. I know that there's a rental cost, but rental costs are usually a lot less than a mortgage.
And also you can get out of a lease.
And you can get out of it. So
you get out of it and you just leave and go to a cheaper rental or live with mum and dad, whatever it is. Like there's so much lower risk with renting.
So having that home, and even then kids to an extent, that they create a lot more, you don't want to take much risk. So if you're not doing the home ownership, you can take these risks. Yeah,
you can be more aggressive, right? Number 7, diversify investments.
Yeah.
So that means you can buy like an investment property in say 3 or 4 different markets. You can buy either an apartment, townhouse, house. You can go into commercial property, office, retail, industrial. You can do property developments as well. There's so many different things, and I do all of these things, right? And it's great because when one market's up, the other one might be sort of, a bit flat, and you can get to take advantage of, I guess, different asset types, right? Whereas if you do the home, it's the one asset.
All your eggs in one basket, especially if that's all you have. So, diversifying is 101 when it comes to investing. So if you're going down that path, really mix it up. All markets are different, so your risk exposure is down. Maybe buying the home as an actual way to build wealth and invest isn't the best because you're limited to one area. You could spread across. So it's a good point. I think property going back.
And it doesn't have to be property.
Doesn't have to. Yeah. All I was going to say on that is, if you're growing your future, which is what we talk about, and we've talked about this a lot of time, leverage is your best friend. So we're starting with limited money. If you want to expand that, the only way is leverage. So initially property, and we've done, like, you've exposed yourself to different asset types, gold, crypto, all this kind of stuff. Compared to property, which one more consistently gave you growth? Property,
yeah.
And growth not on even your money, because you borrowed
money.
It. So if you're expanding if you're early on, which is who we're talking to, younger people potentially, they want to expand as much as they can. It's leverage and property.
And it mitigates the risk, right? Because you're spread across different markets, different asset types, and they're smaller investments, generally speaking. So we specialize in sub-$1 million purchases. There's always going to be a market for that stuff. All right, number 8, family. Family's a big one. Even though we're delaying having kids, it is very important. Now, if you're focusing on just paying a mortgage, going to work, you're spending less time with your family because you're trying to make money to pay the mortgage. But if you're traveling more, you're focused on lifestyle more, there's a good chance that you're probably going to be spending more time with your family. So I've noticed that since having a baby that you just value time so much more, and hence the reason why we've decided to take off next week for a month, because it forces me to spend time with my family, and I'm never going to get that time back, right? Like it doesn't matter how successful you are, you're never going to be able to jump into a time machine and go, hey, I would love to spend more time with my son when he was 18 months old for a month. Like, it's not going to happen, right? So we need to seize the moment and go, okay, let's really, just cherish every minute that we have. And I think millennials and Gen Zs are realizing that, hey, the baby boomers sort of left us. Like I was speaking to Jade's godfather while we were overseas recently, and he said, look, he's from the baby boomer generation, and he said, he's quite successful, and he said, look, I just wasn't around that much when I had the kids because I was always at work, right? And why was he always at work? Because he was trying to pay off the mortgage, right? So, and he was building his business at the same time, and he's very successful, and I really do look up to him. But when you think about it, I don't want to miss out on those moments with my son, right? So, this strategy gives us that flexibility where we're not chained to this mortgage, where we can go, hey, we can spend time with the family. It's more important to us. It's probably number one.
Well, going on from that, I remember hearing someone say or it's a meme or something, the only people that know how much harder you worked each day are your kids
Yeah.
or something, not the bosses.
Yeah,
or
I've seen
whoever.
that one.
You seen
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah. It's
And
a good line.
Yeah, it's a good line, and it shows you that the parents over time will regret the time they didn't get to spend with their kids. So, if this is, and one other thing is, I found going through all my research and just living and seeing what people are doing, you don't need a home to start a family. I always had that, and it's drummed into you. Like, you get married, you buy a home, you have.
Well, this goes back to our previous podcast where we were talking about how my parents started out. Like, I was a second child, and I was born in a 2-bedroom apartment. You know what I mean? Like, it was just normal for them. So, you know, and we turned out great. You know what I mean?
Nothing wrong with this.
So, like, you know, you grew up without even having a bedroom. You know, and you turned out great. Like, it's not the end of the world. Like, you don't have to own the home. Like, get it out of your head. You know, there are other things in life that are much more important, but it doesn't mean you forget to create wealth for yourself.
That's it.
Okay, number 9. Let's move quickly. Health, right?
Yes.
This is probably, when you think about it, this is probably number 1, right? Health is massive now for the younger generation. They're spending. You can see it in the gyms. Like, everyone's.
It's a massive market, man.
Yeah, like everyone's focused on health and fitness and longevity and sustainability. I probably think this is number 1 because without, especially us men who provide for our families, like, we need to be in top shape inside and out so we can continue to provide, because if something happens to us, then your family suffers. So this is a big priority, and I'm not saying home ownership is going to, you know, deteriorate your health, but if you've got more time on your hands and more flexibility, you can focus on it a lot more.
Well, what's the biggest stressor at the moment? Mortgage stress. Who's that affecting? It's people who bought homes and live in homes. They're the main ones who are feeling all this economic turmoil type stuff happening now. So, although, like, we're not saying it's going to happen to everyone, you can limit that. And if you go in too early or you haven't planned out what you want to do, you can run into some issues that you could have avoided if you went down another path. That's all we're trying to say, is there's another route.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like, you know what, I think if I had one house paying off a mortgage, I'd feel more stressed than I do having what I have and all the debt I have now being paid by a tenant helping me pay it off.
Yeah.
So,
it's actually less risk.
But I'm so much bigger than I could have been.
Yeah.
So it's weird. Like, I can sleep better. Where if I had a 1.5 mortgage on a house I lived in, I'd be stressed every day.
Yeah.
So,
and we all know people like that, right? So we want to focus on all of these things. The last one, we talk about it quite a lot. We actually did a whole podcast on it. It's about giving back.
Yeah.
Whether that's through charities or philanthropic work, similar to what we're doing here with this podcast. The reason why we can do the podcast, because we don't own a home. You know? But, you know, like, we have time to do it, and, you know, we enjoy doing it. We enjoy giving back. We enjoy contributing to our charity. And look, at the end of the day, these things are what are important to you and I and a lot of other people within this generation. So I think, you know, re-collaborating and figuring out what is it that you really want out of life. And these 10 things here is, you know, I know you and I, these are the things that we want in life. And it trumps home ownership. So for our listeners, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I hope you got a lot of value away from it as well, because home ownership's drilled into you, you know, and these are great alternatives. So really have a think about it. Until next time, we'll see you later.